What's up, listeners? If you are looking for a fresh, innovative way to elevate your guest experience effortlessly, you're in the right place. Join me for this conversation where I showcase the story of an award-winning non-alcoholic beer and single-serving wine that's creating a significant impact, not just in restaurants, but also in the community and on the planet. Niki Sawni is the co-founder and CEO of Grüvi, a playful and delicious brand of feel-good social beverages. Originally from Toronto, Niki and his sister Anika moved to Colorado with just an idea, some unmarked silver cans, and a lot of hustle. Fast forward 5 years, they've become one of the fastest growing brands in the alcohol-free space and have won the highest awards in both beer and wine. Today, we're going to talk about Grüvi's approach to differentiating their brand by offering single-serving packaging and creating flavor profiles that are different than anything else you've seen on the market. We're also going to share how the company has brought their loyal customers along as investors and how Grüvi's approach to sustainability and community helps them attract top talent and retain employees. Welcome to the No Hesitations podcast, the show where restaurant leaders learn tools, tactics, and habits from the world's greatest operators. I am your host, Kristen Marvin with Solutions by Kristen. I've spent the last 2 decades in the restaurant industry and now partner with restaurant owners to develop their leaders and scale their businesses without wasting time and energy so they can achieve work-life balance and make more money. Hi, Niki. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. I am so excited about this episode today. For anybody that's been listening to the show, they know how much of a crazy fan of the non-alcoholic beverage scene I am. For those of you that don't know, I'm a huge fan. And when Tyler and I stopped drinking a couple of years ago, we really were trying to find a really delicious wine. And it's really hard. A lot of the non-alcoholic wines out there taste like grape juice. And we had searched and searched and searched. I mean, gosh, we were both sommeliers and wine connoisseurs for, 15 plus years. So wine was something that we still wanted to be able to pair with our meals for dinner and just enjoy on a patio on a nice sunny day. My husband's nickname used to be Tyler Rosé because he loved drinking a lot of rosé. So anyway, huge fan of Grüvi. Was so excited to discover your product. We are just huge fans of the dry red blend and your bubbly rosé. Those are 2 of our favorites. So it's super excited to be able to connect with you and Anika and cheer you on and hear more about your story and how this has really grown, and just super excited to share your story and brand with the listeners today. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it and appreciate all your, advocacy, both for the alcohol-free movement, but also prioritizing physical and mental health within the hospitality industry. I think there's a tie between both of those things, and they're both heading totally in the right direction. So the more awareness that, both of us can push, the better and happier everyone will be in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, 100%. There's such important topics, and we really, I think if the industry wants to be successful and sustainable, we need to really challenge operators to think differently about every single aspect of operating their business. And I think, I started drinking in restaurants when I was 19 at the end of the shift, and, the manager was the one pouring us cocktails. And I think that alcohol is such a predominant part of the culture in restaurants, and there's so much accessibility. And I'm excited to see more non-alcoholic options coming into restaurants that can be available for not just the staff, but for the guests as well. So I'm super excited, like I said, to share your story and the story of the company. But I'd really love to start by diving into your mission. Your mission statement says that you are trailblazing a new way to live and socialize with alcohol-free beverages that make every moment more groovy, which I love. Will you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So, Anika, like you mentioned, we started Grüvi with my sister Anika. We're both under 40. She's actually a Forbes under 30.
So cool.
winner. But I mean, from an early age, I think we both inherently could feel the challenges with alcohol. Like, they don't call it like a anxiety for nothing. Like the repercussions, we were like, okay, it's obvious that this is having kind of negative impact on both your physical and mental health. Um, and so, we both love socializing, love beer, love wine, and really wanted to help create a platform that allowed people to reduce their alcohol consumption in like a fun and playful way, and allow them to enjoy all the moments, all the groovy moments that they may have felt like they were missing out when they were reducing alcohol consumption. So that's kind of where that mission started.
Where'd the name Groovy come from?
Yeah, so going to the mission was like, how do we normalize alcohol-free products? And they had such a negative stigma. We started 5 years ago, right? And it's a little bit of a different environment now, but 5 years ago, we would get laughed out of most bars and restaurants. And so we were like, how do we take something that is so uncool, really, and try to make it fun and cool? And really, the word groovy is what kind of came to us. It's because groovy was an old word, and it had that meaning of excellent, playful, cool. And so we're like, let's put this name on this category and see if we can help direct it in the right direction. Obviously, the traditional spelling of groovy was untrademarkable, so we had to make some adjustments. But we ended on GRU with an umlaut, VI, and just bringing that like inherent feeling that word brings to the brand. So it's
Love it.
funny because sometimes we'll just run into people where that word was part of their regular vocabulary. Maybe they were part of the hippie era, and it's just nice to see like a smile come back to their face as they remember those times in their life.
I love it. That's awesome. So you mentioned 5 years ago when you started, you were getting laughed out of restaurants. Was that in Colorado or?
Yeah, so we started. Anika and I are both originally from Toronto, but we decided to pack up and move to Colorado to launch the business. Um, not out of anything too strategic. We had just like Googled the healthiest state in the US. And I think Colorado came up, and like most craft beer breweries, and it was Colorado. So we're like, oh, let's give this place a shot. And in hindsight, it's such a awesome market to build a brand. A lot of really supportive individuals, and breweries and stuff like that. Um, and so yeah, the first little bit we sold into liquor stores, and they were moderately accepted, but we really had no traction in the bar or restaurants. They wouldn't even kind of entertain the idea. So for a long time, we probably had like less than 10 customers that were bars and restaurants for those first few years.
When did you see the shift start to happen?
The big shift, honestly, in the last like 6 months.
Wow.
Um, it's slowly started accumulating, but the last 6 months has been uh, phenomenal on-prem adoption of alcohol-free products. I think we were chatting earlier, but in Colorado, which is our home market, almost half the business now is coming from bars and restaurants, where prior it was like less than 5%. So it just shows you the uptake
Yeah.
from bars and restaurants, but more importantly, the demand is what's pulling it. It's not just people putting it on for the sake of it because they're reading the news and they're seeing all podcasts and stuff like this. The customers are buying this products in large quantities, and they continue to add and figure out where that balance is. So that's kind of exciting for us, and it's a big focus for us moving forward is working with more bars and restaurants.
I love it. Are you finding that customers are calling for your products more and more and more? Or are you guys still, I mean, I know you're always going to be in sales and out there hustling, but are you seeing that people are starting to recognize the brand more and call for it?
Yeah, it's slowly, for years it's felt like it's been pushing the snowball up the hill. I would say it's like on flat ground, kind of, starting to roll by
Nice.
itself, which is always easier.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we have such like a focus on, our home market right now that, as you know, people bounce around. They maybe they carried Grüvi at one restaurant and now they're working at another one. They can make their recommendations, so it starts to become a little bit easier, and the brand awareness is there.
Hmm. So, and you guys are distributed through Southern Wine and Spirits, is that right?
A
In
bunch of
Colorado?
different distributors.
Okay.
We do elite brands in Colorado. We do Southern in a few other states.
Okay.
We've kind of found our home in that, craftier distributor, and
Hmm.
ones where we're not the bottom of the barrel in terms of their brands, like something that, their reps can get behind.
Got it. Awesome. So beyond just the product line that you have that we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, you you guys really make a huge impact in terms of sustainability and taking care of your employees and the benefits that you offer. You've got this tremendous impact report on your website that really just, I looked at it the other day and then I went back through it this morning. I think it said on there your volunteer goal for your team was 450 hours and you hit like 430 last year, which is just incredible. Will you talk a little bit about why you decided to really put so much effort into that impact and some of the things that you're really proud of?
Yeah, no, appreciate you taking a look at that. We're super proud of that impact report, and we hold it at the same level of accountability as our financial metrics. They're the same to us. But yeah, I mean, I really actually got inspired from my first job, where I worked at Salesforce, which is a tech company, and they kind of had this initiative, which was like the 1-1-1 model, which was basically like 1% of everyone's time, 1% of product, and 1% of uh, capital going back to your local community. And early days, it allowed me just to feel more connected to the job, more connected to my coworkers, and feel like I was making an impact. So I kind of put that in the back of my mind. I always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, and being like, whatever I do from day one, it's going to have this aspect for it. So, for those interested, you can, on the Grüvi website, you can take a look at our impact report. But as you mentioned, we set our goals for employee social diversity and governance for the company. So from a social aspect, every Grüvi employee is, required to volunteer a half day a month within their local community. They can do whatever they want that they choose, and we report on it. And so if you missed 1 month, maybe the next month you got to do 2 days or bring friends and family to it. We really strive on employee diversity, especially in beer. Beer is very masculine, very white dominated industry. So, we strive for over 50% female employed and over 25% diverse non-white employees. So we hold ourselves to those metrics, and anyone who's even a bar or restaurant or retailers like Whole Foods or investors, we send that out to everybody each year. And so we know that, the collective community is holding us responsible for it.
I love it. I know when we were talking last week, you kind of mentioned too that when you guys were building your impact report, you had just mentioned like, oh, I actually looked at Snooze and found their impact report. And I reached out to a couple of the girls that were part of the company for 10 years and a huge, huge part of that, making that impact come to life and putting that report together. And that totally made their day. So
Oh my God, yeah, that report is kind of like our North Star. So, also recommend people to read through that. Such a well done report, and that's kind of where we hope to get to. But just it's really cool to see a company's impact progress over a longer time period, right?
Mhm.
5 years, 10 years, and see, okay, they reduce their environmental impact by this much each year, and it gets better and better and better, and social and stuff like that. And it just shows you that it's not, some organizations may just talk about it once and then it's, on the side, but Snooze has just done such a authentic job at showing their commitment over the tenure of their brand, and we're going to do the same.
Yeah, I love it. Will you talk a little bit about how that impact and how how infusing that into your culture has really helped with, um, building candidate flow, retaining your staff? What kind of impact has it had on your company in terms of people?
Yeah, I think it has an impact in twofold. One, we're bringing a lot of maybe new people to this industry that maybe they would have got not considered for previous kind of roles. But second, it just allows team bonding. We're a relatively remote company, but we definitely get together for volunteering, and allows us just to kind of connect on something that's not always business focused. And I think for any of us, we want to know that we're doing good in society. And I think anybody when they leave a volunteer event is so happy that they did that. They feel good, and that connection just fosters the Grüvi team feeling like a team.
Love it. You mentioned earlier that you knew that you always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Where did that come from?
Yeah, always like just from day one. So like I was baking cookies and selling them door to door as a kid. I had a business where I was like, selling people's junk, which is like, an early business, made an app. It's just something that, um, I always had that feeling of creating and problem solving. And so I knew this is what I meant to do, really.
Yeah. I mean, you're in one of the toughest segments out there, right? Like the beverage segment is so saturated and there's so much going on and there's so much awareness still to be brought forward. I think about the non-alcoholic category. What are you seeing as far as trends and what's happening in the industry?
Yeah. Well, first off, I was being naive is a blessing. I didn't realize how, you know, challenging beverage is. I, I had no clue. And you just kind of do one thing after another, and you're excited, and then you're in the you're in the beverage industry, and you realize this is a tough business, exciting, but you really got to get your product and ops going, your brand building, your sales requires a lot of capital, um, and uh, and it you need to hustle, right? Especially as the voice or the founder, like you got to be out there building relationships. So uh, I think being naive was great, uh, great early days. But yeah, we're like totally when we look at kind of the data trends. I know you've had other kind of guests on the podcast here, but still very much early days in the non-alc space, coming off of about 30%, I think 33% growth last year. After the first quarter of this year, still on track for 30+% growth again across various channels. We're seeing kind of the demand switch channels this year, and different categories start to develop. So the market is still almost completely dominated by NA beer. It's like 80+% of the market, but NA wines and NA RTDs are starting to develop customers, start making their way onto menus as people find those products for the first time.
Yeah. Hello to all of you amazing leaders in the restaurant world. Before we dive back into today's episode, I want to take a moment and let you know about one of the incredible ways that you can further your team's leadership development. If you've been listening to the show, you've already experienced the passion I have for enhancing leadership skills. Did you know that I also offer exclusive leadership workshops tailored for restaurant management teams? These sessions focus on strengthening leadership abilities, fostering effective communication, crafting a unique leadership style, and developing robust business strategies and visions for the future. If you or anyone you know in the restaurant industry is looking to treat their team to a customized, multi-day leadership training that will improve every aspect of their business, please reach out to me at kristenlmarvin@gmail.com. Thanks a million for being awesome listeners. how are you setting yourself apart from the competition? Let's talk about ways that you're innovating with the beers and the wines and why they taste so fucking delicious.
Yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about talk about that in a few aspects. Um, and so, you know, taking from typical alcohol, one of the best ways build brand is through the bars and restaurants. That allows people to try the product, but also gives you an opportunity to educate them and have the credibility of the menu placement. And so we knew for us to get non-alcoholic wines on the menu is an uphill battle. And so we made a real conscious decision early on to, create the products in single serve factors. Because we knew, a bar restaurant would have a ton of hesitancy around opening a full bottle of wine, maybe not being able to sell all those glasses that night. It was just too much friction, right? So we're like, hey, let's create, a single serve where they can just open. If it's just one a night, that's fine, and allow us to start building habits around alcohol-free products. And then we also noticed that same thing with consumption. A lot of non-alcoholic wine, in particular, is just consumed by one individual during the week. Right? It's still not something where you're going to have 4 or 5 people over and be able to share a bottle. Hopefully we can get there in the future. It's just not realistic right now. And so again, that single serve at a price point that allows somebody to, crack it open without having to, have this huge celebration. We knew that was critical for driving kind of that mainstream adoption, is just increased consumption frequency, because I think we all have felt this, tug and war sometimes, where we're at a bar or restaurant or even at home, and you're deciding whether you want an alcoholic product or not. Um, and that can be this kind of internal tug of war, but you're always so happy once you've chosen the alcohol-free product. No one's ever regretted it. Once you get the taste and the satisfaction and all the placebo effects associated with it, you're like, oh, I made the right decision. You congratulate yourself. So how do we make that as easy as possible for everybody? And that was kind of that initial focus. And then, yeah, from a taste perspective, I think that's going to be paramount for this entire industry. The products, what the customer wants is products that taste as close to the alcoholic version as possible. That's
Yeah.
that's that's the benchmark. And so, the products that we launched 5 years ago are very different than the products that we have today, because you're constantly learning about new ways to produce the products, getting better. And so, for our beers, we produce, full alcoholic beers. We remove the alcohol. And then kind of what's unique to Grüvi is we add a final level of fermentation, and that's what kind of cleans up the beers, allows it to have like a real authentic beer taste. And yeah, some of the awards that we've received kind of speak for themselves. So one of our lagers won world's best non-alcoholic beer last year, gold medal at the World Cup of Beer. And then we did the same thing on the wine side this year. So the highest awarded, our sangria was the highest awarded NA wine produced in North America last
Amazing.
year. Same kind of approach. So yeah, what's next for us is, the beers I would say are there. And so where the innovation occurs next is probably kind of that form factor, is can we move NA beer to draft handles,
Mm.
so that an individual again can order a draft beer and it comes in a ice cold glass identical to any other product. Right? That's a big step for somebody, where they can just order and it comes back and there's no difference. You're not getting a can that's sitting on the side kind of thing. And so that's probably the next wave. And we're starting to see and get the requests for that product. So I think this year or next year, I wouldn't be shocked if they start outselling several of the alcoholic beers. So
Yeah, I love that. When we first stopped drinking, we weren't really, we were trying to figure out everything, but we weren't quite ready to start explaining to everybody why we had chosen to stop drinking. And, but we were still hanging out with the same group of friends. We were going to parties, and, I remember the first couple times we went to parties, like we would stop, we'd pick up a 6-pack of NA beer, and then we'd throw a koozie on it so that people would just think that we were drinking the same thing, right? And I love the idea of a tap. I'm thinking like being out in a restaurant or a food hall vibe or whatever, like everything just looks the same. There's no questions. You don't even have to prepare a response or have any of that anxiety or peer pressure around what you're going to drink, because it's certainly a real thing, right? Whether you're at a happy hour with coworkers or you're at a work function, you're on a retreat with your managers, or whatever the case is, holiday party, it's that pressure is definitely real. So
Yeah, that's why I'm a big believer in just like anything that we can do to cut the friction to allow an individual to make that choice for them. Those are the investments in the right area. So like, early days, it wasn't on the menu, right? So you've created more friction because somebody has to ask if you have any NA. So let's put it on the menu. The next area of friction, it could be the server, right? So maybe the server is uneducated about alcohol-free products. They're unaware. They're going to make, they don't even know the brand name sometimes, right? So let's educate there. So reduce the friction once more. Other things that are on alcohol is like, descriptors and stuff like that, right? And so how can we add some of those descriptors to our wine or beers and allow people to know, hey, this was, selected as one of the world's best wines or beers. You can have confidence in your decision that you're going to be satisfied with it. So all of those aspects, and draft being one of them, and we can talk about wine a little bit afterwards, but just reducing any hesitancies and making it as easy as possible for people to make that decision for themselves.
yeah. So what's next for Grüvi?
Yeah, so we're like I mentioned, we're super excited about the on the beer side, but the wine has so much innovation left to be conquered. I think anyone who's tried NA wine, you can try Grüvi. It's some of the best out there. I'll be transparent. There's still a taste gap, right? And there's still a gap that needs to be invested into to close. And what's so interesting about NA wine is you have all these different variables that you can play with, right? So you have, the base alcoholic wine that there's so many, different styles and quality and so much, different stuff you can do there. That's always going to be tweaking to figuring out which wines are best suited to alcohol-free wines. And then you have the alcohol removal technology, which is, constantly developing what is the best way to actually remove the alcohol, and how can we do it in a way that is the most retains the most of the original wine. So there's always variables playing there. And then when it comes out, what can you do to the after product, right? So what can you do to be able to re-add some of those flavors, reintroduce something that may have left, maybe re-add some of the aroma. So it's kind of this fun puzzle where it's like you're trying to improve all three of these aspects of the business or of the product at the same time. And we're really excited for kind of the second two. And I think there's going to be a lot of innovation coming, in the next few years on maintaining the integrity of the wine while the alcohol is being removed, and looking at, even, for those unfamiliar, after the alcohol is removed from the wine, you're still left with this great like base of, it's ethanol, but there's still some great flavors and aromas and stuff captured in it. What can you do with that byproduct, and to continue to refine it, to maybe put some of that stuff back in the wine. We've really turned to other industries to see how they've done it. Right now, we're diving deep into instant coffee in the coffee industry. There's a lot of similarities, obviously, with coffee and wine, and instant coffee is interesting because it's essentially missing all those aromas. So how are they bringing the aromas back into instant coffee to be able to produce a full experience, or decaf, right? And can we use some of those innovations back in wine? So I think give it another year or two, and that gap will be closed significantly.
Wow, that's awesome. How are you staying up to date with all the trends and continuing to develop yourself as, the owner of the company?
Yeah, relying on a handful of advisors, I think. So this was the first company, that really had like employees. Otherwise, it was just myself. So a lot of development has happened and still needs to happen to be able to be an effective leader. So just fortunate to have an advisory board of individuals who have managed and led, consumer packaged goods companies and large entities to work on management. I think that's the biggest gap in understand how to communicate and um, set a direction and give people a parameter to work within, but some creativity, but the guardrails of what's needed, and just being open to receiving feedback and actively trying to collect feedback,
Mm.
so that relationships and trust can be developed.
That's great. Yeah, collecting feedback can be really, really challenging, depending on
Yeah,
where you're at and in the stage of your business, for sure.
yeah. I think it couldn't. It's just so impactful for all aspects of life. We develop the products off the feedback of our customers. Just understanding how important it is. So if you ever grab a Groovy product, all of them have a QR code on them somewhere, and that's where we get our customer feedback. So if you scan our golden lager, and you say it, tastes like this, tastes like that, we look at that at a quarterly basis and been like, okay, we're getting 7 out of 10 here, and 80% of people said they would rebuy. Let's take the criticism and see if we can make a little tweak to it, and then let's look at it next quarter. Okay, now we're 8.2%, out of 10 kind of thing. Are we getting better? Or are we getting worse? And just doing that with all aspects of the business, employees, product and investors. We have a very fortunate that we have a large community of customers that are also our investors, and so just try to collect as much feedback on how we can make the best tasting products in the market.
Will you say a little bit more about how your customers are your investors?
Yeah. So, I guess being naive again at the early days, I totally didn't understand the industry and was just like reaching out to all these like venture funds and hedge funds that are probably not the right fit for Groovy, or we weren't even, even close to the right radar. And as I mentioned, like also naive at how much capital a beverage company requires. You commend if someone's built one on their own, bootstrapping, but it requires support and help. And so it kind of came, naturally, but we would get these emails from customers every once in a while saying, "Hey, I absolutely love your products. It's made a big impact on my life. If you ever need investors, let me know," kind of thing.
Wow,
And so, we got these emails, and we didn't really know what to do with them, um, because to invest in like a startup, you have to be an accredited investor, actually, which requires certain levels of knowledge and wealth and stuff like that. But they started coming in frequently enough that we decided to host a webinar, and so we invited everybody who had emailed, and then we also just sent that out to our community, hosted it, and basically asked if anyone was interested in investing, and welcoming them on board to the company. And we have 120 now individuals who have invested in Groovy, and most of them started as customers.
that's so
So we
awesome.
got this we got this like incredible WhatsApp group where uh, what we communicate with them, and uh, they'll like let us know, hey, I saw Groovy at Whole Foods, so good, like great, or the bads, like, hey, your product was all beaten up, and I got a shipment, and it looked like a dog destroyed it. Great, we need to know that too. Like, let's go fix those things, right? So it's kind of just been this nice uh, relationship to have investors that are passionate, but also like in it for the long run, right?
Yeah,
And allow us to build the Groovy brand intentionally.
I love that. It sounds like there's so much. organic growth happening in addition to you guys just hustling your tails off. I know how busy you are and how hard you're working. And, kudos to you for really creating something that's making a huge impact in people's lives. And I've never heard a story of anybody that owns a company saying, "Oh yeah, people have just started emailing me wanting to invest in my company." That's
So
like when you
so
said that the other day, it like blew my mind. I was like, "What is
like
this?"
there's no chance we would be where we are today without that.
Wow,
Like they've just been so instrumental in getting us like through that really tough phase of being a startup, right? Like going from, 2 or 3 people to, we're 12 approaching 15, like that just requires support. And it had to come from this group. I don't think it was going to come from, venture funds and investment bankers and stuff like that. It was just very fitting.
that's so cool. Well, congratulations on all your success. Super excited for you guys, and I'll be traveling back to Denver next week to host a leadership workshop. So, you want to highlight some of the restaurants that I can go to drink Grüvi?
Yeah, we were just doing a little report. We're at 308 restaurants in Colorado.
Woohoo!
So a lot of the actual local breweries
Okay,
um, have been great partners. A lot of the creative concept brands have been good partners. So the
culinary
Misto,
creative.
so
Yep,
and yeah, and
yep,
the Tap and Burgers,
awesome.
uh,
Some of my
and
favorite restaurants.
yeah, and really kind of finding a home in the Italian space right now. Maybe it's because our proseccos or our wines. So a bunch of different options. If you're ever looking for a place that has Grüvi, we have that kind of a website finder
Awesome.
that lists them all, and just trying to do a good job of also sharing their stories as well on our social.
I love it.
Um,
You said you're obviously in liquor stores, you're in Whole Foods, you can order online. Are you in Sprouts or any other
we're
retailers?
in Colorado,
Okay.
actually Colorado and New Mexico. The other kind of main retailers would be Total Wine,
Okay.
so any Total Wine location, and then yeah, it depends on the areas. In Midwest, Fresh Time and Binny's, and in the Rocky Mountain Safeway as well. So just continuing to chip away and add new distribution availability for everybody.
I love it. Well, you guys are doing an incredible job. Thanks again for coming on the show and telling your story and giving us a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what you're doing. And can't wait to just continue to watch your journey and watch you guys grow. So really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, appreciate for you having me and allowing me to share our story as well. And like I said at the beginning, we're a huge fan of the work that you do, and we'll continue to amplify it together. And excited where the future takes us.
I love it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to share this podcast with any leaders you know in the restaurant industry. And we will talk to you next week. Thanks so much.